Surprisingly enough, there are some Catholics who oppose vaccination. Okay. I was kind of surprised at this too. And in particular, there was an article in the Washington Post back in June. This woman named Rita Palma, who apparently started having visions from God.
She wasn't a Palma Rita?
That's her name. I didn't make that up. Anyway, she apparently started having visions from God that told her to stop vaccinating her kids.
Was she doing it like weekly? Because that might be a good thing, you know, if she just kept on injecting them.
Well, apparently she had vaccinated them all up to the point where her youngest kid was due for his last Hep B vaccination, and she wasn't going to get it because she said, okay, I'm now opposed to vaccines. And she lost her appeal because the state said, no, you got to vaccinate your kid. Because Catholics, you know, don't have, you know, the doctrine doesn't oppose vaccination, so they said.
And even if it did, this is something that might have lost. And I'll kind of sidetrack for half a second here. A federal court just ruled the Illinois moments of silence in public schools unconstitutional. And the judge made a comment, and I'll get the quote wrong, but that while the protections for religious freedoms didn't cover all actions taken in the name of religion, is essentially what it came down to. And this type of thing applies as well, that, you know, okay, if you, granted, I think everybody should get their kids immunized appropriately anyway, but if you're going to want to put your kid in public school where he's around other kids, then you can't use religion or anything else as your excuse, unless you have a medical reason not to do it. You're putting everybody else in jeopardy, and you don't get to do that because your freedoms end where other people's begins. And yeah, if you, I mean, granted, I'd love to say, and I almost did say, if you don't want to immunize your child, that's fine. Actually, that's an area where I think the state should intervene anyway. If you're going to homeschool your kid till he's 35 and you decide you don't want to vaccinate him, tough, you're going to do it anyway because he's going to come in contact with other people, and because, wait a minute, what's that? Oh, he's another human being, and we have a vested interest in making sure that your stupidity and your prejudice don't cause him to die and suffer for your ignorance. That's a reason for doing it. Not to mention, you know, I mean, this doesn't just apply to public school. That's the reason I would back it.
Yeah. Well, and of course they turned down her lawsuit, saying, you know, the judge ruled against her, or I guess the school district ruled against her, and then she filed a lawsuit claiming that
it was a liberal judge ruling from the bench.
Apparently, yeah. But
I'm
anyway,
sorry, I got a sane judge last time. Can I get a new one?
So she was saying that her personal beliefs should have the same weight as a religious conviction, even though her church didn't.
I agree with her there.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, fuzzy thinking. Well,
my personal beliefs should have exactly the same weight as your religious beliefs. I have no problem with that. I just don't think either of them are justification for not vaccinating your kid.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with it there. One of the things that she said in the interview was that vaccinations are based on a very dark, threatening, pessimistic principle that if you do not inject your child, he will become sick or could die. To me, good health is earned through seeking God.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. So she's going to pray that her child doesn't come in contact with an infectious disease and die.
Well, we see how that's for. I mean, we have the parents of that poor little girl who had diabetes, and they decided to pray because they believe in more strongly than she did. They didn't vaccinate all their other kids and then decide one day that God says, I'm done with this. They were just, you know, I don't know, true believers. You're a fake believer. You just decided one day you wanted to change. They were true believers, and boy, did their kid pay the price for their beliefs and their ignorance. She's dead. They killed her. She was diabetic. They didn't take her to a doctor. They didn't get her diagnosed. They didn't do anything. They just sat there and prayed while she got sicker and sicker and sicker, and they're fine with it because it's God's will. Well, now she's dead. Diabetic ketoacidosis, sent her into a coma. She was DOA at the hospital, and they're getting ready to finally face trial for killing their daughter. And I hope they face up to 25 years apiece, I think, is the maximum penalty. I hope they both get the maximum. And I really wish somebody would raise the maximum. Because to me, Yeah, we have an interest in protecting people. I don't want to make a special case thing that says, oh, if you're the parent of a child and that child dies as a result of your gross negligence, that should be more viewed as worse than if you killed another adult through your gross negligence. I don't necessarily want to make that special case. But we kind of do, because we don't get to decide who gets to become a parent and who doesn't. We don't have a licensing facility. We don't require any special training or certification. Pretty much, if you can get laid, you can become a parent. That's just the way it goes. It's at least possible. And once people become a parent, all of a sudden society has this, whoa, we can't touch anything that happens in your home. That's sacrosanct. You get to raise your child however you want to. That is your right as a human being. And in some areas, in most areas, I'm fine with that, up until the point where we're doing harm and risking doing harm. That's where I think we have an obligation to step in. And that's where I think it's fine to say, you know what, you're entitled to believe that this is God's plan for your kid to lay here sick until it either miraculously jumps up and goes out to play hopscotch or croaks. You're entitled to believe that. However, you're not entitled to take action or avoid taking action based on that belief. That's the problem. And now there's a little girl dead over it. It's not the first little girl. It's not even the first little girl we've mentioned on this show that's died because of stupid stuff like this. Now, yes, okay, it's different. The diabetes isn't necessarily the same as the vaccination, but there's a connection there that I don't think anybody can deny. The idea that we are going to place the health of our children, and in the case of vaccinations, risk the health of every other child that our child comes in contact with, just because we have a religious belief that God's watching out for him, or God, whatever God wants is going to happen, or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're praying to a rock in your backyard, or Rick Warren's Yahweh, Yeshua, Jesus, or, you know, a Hindu God. It doesn't matter. If you can't demonstrate that what you're doing is actually better for the child than secular alternatives, modern medicine, you're corrupt. You have given up your humanity. You have given up your empathy. You have given up your sanity. And your kid is going to pay the cost. And that's where I think we ought to step in. And I hope they throw the book at both of them. And I hope that this type of thing starts getting prosecuted more often in more places. And I'm not just picking on Christian Scientists or Amish people or anybody. If the anti-vaxxer crowd, because of their ridiculous beliefs that aren't in any way religious, jeopardize the lives of their kids and other people's kids, I hope they throw the book at them too. It's time. It's, you know, with all the problems here, in the world that we face, the last thing we need is an epidemic of ignorant parents. I think we've been facing that epidemic for years, and this is one way to possibly curb it. To finally say, you know, there are times when we have to step in, and let's do it. So,
well, and yeah, and you made a very valid point here. When you choose not to vaccinate your child, you're not just making a decision for your child, you're making a decision for a lot of other people's kids too. The people who can't take vaccinations for medical reasons, the ones who are too young for that vaccination, or those who don't develop an immune response. And no vaccine is 100% effective, so there will always be a percentage of kids who don't develop an appropriate immune response.
yep.
If you don't vaccinate, you put all of those kids at risk.